Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here today and welcome to another session of Hablemos. Today we have a top of the line guest. My name is Carolina Veira, and today I am hosting the beautiful and the multi talented Claudia Vazquez. For those who don't know yet, she is the CEO of Elevink, and she is also the founder of Elevink. And she will share with us today not only her life story, but what encouraged her to start this elevink and focus on the various underrepresented communities here in the U.S. And all the work and the beautiful work that she's doing currently and in the future for the Hispanic community. You truly are, Claudia, one of those leaders that, um, how do we say, walk the talk. So I'm very proud and happy to be hosting you here today, sharing your story of success, of leadership, of inclusion, and purpose more than anything. So, Claudia, how are you today?
Carolina, thank you so much for this invitation and for your kind words. I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day today, and it's always great to be able to connect with like minded individuals. I feel the same way about all the work that you've done, the work that you're currently doing, and the passion that you bring into everything that you do. So, thank you so much for hosting me today and for allowing this opportunity for us to co create a new chapter of Hablemos.
Beautiful, beautiful. And a new chapter of Elevate, because there's a few changes happening, uh, but for the better, right? And I love the fact that you're here to share a little more about who is Claudia, who was Claudia before, where is she now, and where is she heading? So why don't we start with who's Claudia? Tell us more about your life story. Share with us.
Sure. So Claudia was born in California to Mexican parents. But when she was 1 year old, she moved back to Mexico with her parents and grew up and was raised in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico until her mid 20s. So technically, my life was growing up in Mexico. At one point in my life, I lived right by the border of Mexico and the United States. So I was spending half of my life in the United States and half of my life in Mexico, becoming bicultural, bilingual, and bi-citizen. What I mean by that is I crossed the border every single day to the United States to go to school and work, but I lived in Mexico, so I used to cross the border back. Up until my mid 20s when I got married and decided to move into California full time and start our life together in California. At that point was when I realized that I wanted to do more for the community and that I couldn't just be a role model or do good with my own life, but that I wanted to have an impact. So I started to teach English as a second language to adults at a community school in Pasadena, California. I also started to prepare individuals who wanted to obtain their citizenship, their U.S. citizenship. So I was doing English classes, but then also the citizenship classes, helping them achieve their dream of becoming U.S. citizen, sharing with them the privileges of voting and everything that has to do with being a U.S. citizen. I also volunteered at that time to be part of the 2000 U.S. Census and knocked on doors, make sure that the Hispanic population was being accounted for, and that they understood that regardless of their legal status at that point in the United States, they still had the ability to be able to be counted so that all the services that need to be provided to certain communities would be taken into consideration. And as I started my career since I was 14 in Mexico, I've always worked for insurance companies. Well, except for I don't know, maybe like a 12, 18 month where I was in a fast food company. But other than that, it has always been with insurance, with State Farm, with Unum, with Cigna, most recently with Prudential, and will continue to be on the insurance industry. I am very passionate about what the financial wellness and what the financial industry can offer to all communities, but specifically changing the mindset of how the Hispanic population sees insurance tools as a way to create wealth and as a way to protect their wealth. And So that's pretty much it. I mean, combining full-time work with full-time school with volunteering and making sure that I am saying yes to opportunity, saying yes to going to schools and speaking in front of, students at a university, saying yes to going to middle school students and encouraging those middle schoolers to stay in school and to complete a bachelor's degree, and that even though they don't have role models, that there's stories of individuals like myself who was the first one to break the generation of I'm a first generation to go to college, and that's a lot of responsibility on a family, but I also know that I'm setting the tone and I'm setting the stage for my kids, my nephews, my nieces to continue in that path.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it must have been so challenging to cross the border when you were that little. I mean, I can only imagine. Tell us a little. I would love to learn more about that experience, because it rings a bell with some people that who have shared with me that sometimes you feel like you're not fully from the US and you're not 100% from Mexico or whatever other country it is. But in this case, since you're crossing the border, Mexico, um, how did you manage to understand and to own your place and to know that, yeah, it's okay to feel like you belong to both places?
Yes, that's a great question. So, for people that live right at the border of the Tijuana, Baja California, and the San Diego, California border, there's thousands of people that actually do what I do. So, when you are in that space, you don't really question yourself because there is a high percentage of individuals that are living your same life, right? So, you don't question it. It's not until you go further down, like when I got married and I moved further down to Oaxaca and Chiapas, that people couldn't understand the concept of me crossing the border. And then that's when I face what you're mentioning. Or the same thing when I moved full time into Pasadena, California, which is in the northern part of California. That's when you start to understand that it was a privilege in a way, right? Because you constantly navigated both cultures. I constantly was able to navigate between not only the culture, but the language and the ability to be able to service customers that were both American, but also could have been Mexican American that were expecting certain services in a bilingual basis. So I think that it opened my mind and my ability to be able to navigate and quickly adapt and assimilate depending on the situation that I was placed.
Do you think that helped you become a better leader, being exposed to two cultures or multiple cultures at the same time?
Oh, definitely. It definitely helped me. Again, as we talk about leadership and my leadership style, for example, my leadership style has been evolving as I grow. At first, I could say that I was very set in regards of how things should have been done. And as I have grown, I started to meet people where they are. I've always been a good listener. My bachelor's is in psychology, and I think that part of taking 4 years of psychology classes and understanding the social and intellectual and psychological development from childhood to becoming a geriatric individual, it's understanding that we're all coming from different places. So I have now learned to meet people where they are and to listen and not necessarily try to influence to take a specific route, but realizing that we each have our own answers within ourselves, right? We just need someone to help guide us get to that point where inside of us, whether it's on a mental space or into our heart and soul, to be able to rediscover and find that path. So when I mentor someone nowadays, I do it with a very different approach. And again, I have led large organizations, and sometimes there has been crisis. So on those situations, I apply more of a crisis management leadership approach because decisions have to be made and certain things need to be cared for. But when I'm mentoring someone, developing talent, ensuring that motivating people, I try to understand what motivates that individual, because some individuals are motivated by recognition, some of them it's only by money, and some of them they just want to know that their manager or their manager's manager, it's paying attention, it's seeing them, it's understanding and valuing them. The other thing that I am very strong about is understanding people's strengths and playing with those strengths to create strong teams. Sometimes we tend to focus too much on our weaknesses or on areas of opportunities. But nowadays, and obviously we want to improve on those, don't get me wrong. But I think if we play on the strengths, on the things that we're really good at, on the things that people enjoy, and we focus our attention to and those strengths. And if you people and everybody's doing the same, I think that that's when you can have this explosion of ideas. And this is where, the diversity and inclusivity, because everybody, it's different and coming from different backgrounds, could be mastered and could be solved for better. So it's definitely been a tremendous opportunity. And what I tell my mentees is that I learn from them just as much as they may feel that they learn from me. So, because I've had mentees who are extremely young and they come with all this tech savviness, they know how to use certain applications that I may not even be exposed or aware to, and they bring it up to me. So I get excited because no matter how, what stage of their life the mentee is at, there's always an opportunity for us to, to learn together.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, you become more effective if you focus on the areas that you're good at rather than your weaknesses, or like we call it, areas of opportunity. But so managing such large teams, what has been the most rewarding part of leading those teams, and which one do you consider has been the most challenging part?
The most rewarding, definitely when you hired someone and you see that person grow, where you see that person becoming even better than yourself, when you start to see them shine because of their own time, for the type of work that they're doing, and ensuring that you are there behind them, cheering them and pushing them or encouraging them to continue to give their best. People experiences tend to prove, to be the most rewarding. When you get a letter, a thank you letter years after for something that you didn't even consider to be a big deal, but for that person's life, for that person's career, the impact that you had in that individual, that word of encouragement that you had for that person at a specific time, when they remind you of how important that was, it's really rewarding. And I don't have it in front of me, but I do keep a box. It's a red box where I keep all the thank you cards that I have received, along many years of leading teams. And I keep that because when I'm self-doubting myself, when I'm at those moments of fear, whether I want to try something new and I feel that I guess may not be the right time, I go to that box and I read those to validate and to remind myself that, oh, at that point in time, many years ago, I was feeling the same way, and I went for whatever thing that was, and it turned out to be positive. So it's a little bit of my secret weapon that I keep with me.
Your
And then,
secret sauce.
yes, and then the most challenging, it could be sometimes when there has been miscommunication due to language barriers. When you're leading global teams and you have teams at different time zones who speak different languages, which culture is different, where they may not necessarily feel comfortable saying no. So they might say, oh, we'll look into it. But in reality, that means no, until you learn that for their culture means like, we're not really going to go that route. I think that transitional period and that learning curve at one point in time was probably the most challenging, to ensure that everybody was speaking, was at the same page, and finding a methodology or a way to ensure that we were clear on what the next expectations were.
How do you go about that? Now more than ever, we live in a globalized world, and things are changing. And the point that you made is it's very valid, where you have teams all over the world. I mean, there's some people who manage big teams all over the world, not necessarily the same time zone, not necessarily the same language, the same customs, the same traits and qualities, everything in between. What has been key? What has been essential? What has been your way of your key to success in managing those global teams?
Yes, I actually created a playbook for each one of the countries in which I was working with teams. I was working and interacting with 12 different teams at one point in time, from Asia, Europe, Latin American countries. And what I did is I did a little bit of a study in regards of there are 6 areas in which a culture could be understood. And what I did is I immersed myself into understanding the culture by following those 6 areas, understanding what were their values, whether the country it's a feminine or a masculine thought process, whether their culture is more patriarchic or not. And by understanding some of the key elements of it, for example, in Japan, you have to behave a certain way. You have to use your hands in a certain way to demonstrate respect, to be able, where you sit at the table. If you don't understand how the sitting at the table during a conference is played out, you're not going to be successful. So basically, success came by studying and by practicing those values based on the country that I was working with.
So you have to immerse yourself in those cultures, and
There's no,
that's
I don't see it like there's any other. And then asking questions and saying,
mhm.
like, use my ignorance, but what does this mean for you? Or how important is this? Or if I ask this question, how will it be received? So normally you tend to find someone who is going to be your guide, your buddy, the person that you can make mistakes with, and it's going to help you navigate. But obviously, like, it also took my own initiative to be able to prepare me and then just follow up with those questions, so that the more accelerated you are into being received and perceive as you understand and value and respect their culture, the easier that it will be, right? So for example, in Latin American countries, what do? We don't start a meeting without the chit chatting of, like, how are you doing? How are your kids? So that came natural. I got it. But then if you go to Germany or other countries, it's like business is business, and we start on time and we start right on to business, no chit chatting or not, so even those small things are important in the success of business meetings.
It has to be challenging, because then you have to bridge all the cultures when people from different countries are in one room. So kudos to you for doing that work. But now I can see how the same techniques that you've used for those different teams can be applicable to even within the Hispanic culture. And I'm going to bring it home because, we have different countries, and not, yes, we can all agree that we like the chit chat in the beginning of the meeting, but, there's different things that we do based on how we were raised, or what the country that we're most familiar with. And so here, the call to action for organizations would be to do what you did. If you want to understand a culture in particular, ask questions, right? Don't assume. And try to immerse yourself in understanding how that culture works. And that could also be applicable to different groups, group of women, LGBTQ plus communities, people with special abilities. And I mentioned that because it ties to inclusion, which I know that you are an expert at. And I would love to know, how do you end up doing that work in the different organizations that you've worked at?
So I guess my calling, that's what I'm calling it now, right? My calling has always been to be a voice and represent the Hispanic community. And I first started just by supporting the calls that used to be received for disability claims. I used to take all the calls that were received of people that spoke Spanish. And one of the reasons why I decided to do that was because it was really hard for individual to try to explain their illness, to try to explain the type of medication that they were taking, when their next office visit appointment was going to be, which specialists they needed to see. Imagine having this conversation where you are only able to speak Spanish, the person that is on the other side of the phone only speaks English, and you have a translator in the middle who is not a medical trained individual. Therefore, the way that the translation occurs is not necessarily, the most efficient. So I realized that that was an area of concern, that we were not getting as much information as we needed and wanted, and started to work with that segment out of the population. But that was the first big initiative that I did at a Fortune 500 company. Started to work that end-to-end process to service Spanish-speaking claimants. Then immediately, as I joined the next organization, I realized that in order for us to replicate that model, or to be able to have those services available, we needed to find bilingual individuals that in a pipeline that was close to the geographical locations of where we were, where we had offices. So I started to support our staffing and recruiting with their efforts to create a Hispanic talent pipeline, and created relationships with the organizations at universities. When I started at my next company, like everything has been like building blocks and an evolution where, I know what needs to be done because I've already done it. And sometimes we learn what could be very successful and what may need to be improved. So by the time that I joined my last organization, I immediately raised my hand to become the co-lead of the business resource group, and ensure that we had a strategy to support, our professional development, our community, as well as, again, hiring practices that were aligned. And since then, everything started to automatically come together. I don't consider myself an expert, but definitely I'm very passionate, and I've learned a lot along the way of how to be able to create inclusion practices, not just for Hispanics, but also for all other underrepresented areas. And it's something that I'm very proud of, the work that I have been able to do, and see it as and it's the foundation of Elevink. So we can talk a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about
Yeah,
that.
no, that's the perfect segue, because I was going to ask you, um, how did the idea behind Elvin came about? So why don't you take us through that road?
Yeah, so Elevink starts for elevating inclusion. And this is how it happened. There has been, through my social media, I constantly receive outreaches from people that want me to be their mentor, for people that want to bounce ideas off me, from people that want to have introductions to other people within my network. So I realized that there was a need, or that I could offer something, right? Just based on my own professional experiences, on my own personal contacts, and based on my trajectory of navigating, for Fortune 500 companies in California, in Arizona, and New Jersey. So, that was one of the realizations. Second realization was the fact that, our hiring managers were constantly looking for diverse talent, and always asking if I had any referrals, if I knew anyone that could be recommended. So I realized that, okay, here we have a population of individuals who are underrepresented, who are looking for those opportunities. And then we also have another group that is willing to give them an opportunity, but how do we create that bridge? And as part of the bridge creation, I also realized that a lot of the underrepresented, professionals are in a situation where they may be suffering from imposter syndrome, where they may be first generation, where they may be auto-sabotaging themselves because they don't see themselves as that C-suite leader because they don't have any role model, and it takes a lot of personal desire, determination, and preparation to continue to move forward in that path. So with elevink, I designed a holistic programming. It's a 6-week program where we start with a boot camp where we really touch upon our North Star. And this is a personal exercise. Even though it's a cohort group, everyone has an opportunity to work individually in their own plan. And we call it the personal success plan. But what I want to have through those conversations and the exercises and the dynamics that we have is for people to really touch upon their dreams and what is really their personal North Star without being inhibited to say, I want to be the president of the United States, or I see myself as whatever it is that they see. Sometimes we feel there's much precaution out of not being supported. But if we don't align ourselves with that sentiment, then it's going to take us longer. Then after those 2 days where I bring a mindfulness instructor from UC San Diego, we have a conversation with a chef and nutritionist to talk about what foods to eat, what are some power. We really take it, again, very holistically, because it's not just about the professional individual, it's about the person as a whole. Then we start to talk about business. That's when we start to cover all the personal branding and business acumen and corporate resiliency and other courses that are applicable to the success of leaders in Fortune 500 companies. And then we ended with a resolution where they share what are they going to do within the next 90 days after graduation. And then we have a follow-up meeting with them at day 45 to make sure that they're following through. If not, what can we do? But it's amazing the stories that we've heard. I have a foreign doctor that joined us, and now she has created her own company where she's creating natural juices to sell, as part of her, side business, because she continues to pursue her medical license here in the United States. She studied in Dominican Republic. So it's amazing how everyone's dreams can take a completely different approach. And everything has been online. I mean, elevink was founded on June 17 of 2020. So right in the middle of the pandemic, we had a lot of opportunities. So we have people from California, from Washington, from Florida, from Virginia. But right before I moved to Florida, I hosted an event at my house in New Jersey, and about 12 of them came, and they met for the first time in person. So
wow.
So far, we have graduated 65 people from the cohorts, and we're ready to start cohort number 6. But we've also impacted 300 people through different collaborations and strategic alliances that we have created with other organizations.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Claudia. And I can attest to the beauty of your program. I've had the chance to mentor a couple of your students, and I'm still connected with them, and sometimes we chat. So the mentoring, the opportunity to mentor is always there, right? There's always going to be questions. There's always going to be a room to teach, to share knowledge, to learn from each other. So it's elevink truly not only fulfills that need, but also it's building impact and long lasting relationships. So that's the beauty of what you've designed. And I'm sure that with this pipeline of newly graduated students, you can also bring that talent to any organization, to the current organization, old organizations. You still have those contacts there. So I applaud the work that you're doing. And now, obviously, you've been busy. You stay busy because you somehow managed to do it all. Have a very successful trajectory with Fortune 500 companies. You've been a volunteer. You've mentored. You sponsor people. You created elevink. You continue to give, and you continue to create and to do. And what is your your why. What keeps you going? Why? ¿De dónde saca la energía Claudia para hacer todo lo que hace? Estoy solo de escucharte, ya me cansé. No, pero en realidad, ¿qué es lo que te motiva a hacer todo lo que haces?
I think at the end of the day, I just want to use my time, my energy to help others. I mean, I consider myself a servant leader, and everything that I do it with the heart. Like if I know that when I commit to something, I want to make sure that I'm committed and I'm going to do it right. I mean, I expect excellence of the work that I do. I want to, because I feel like that's all I have, my word, to back me up. So, when I do what I do is I do it from the heart. But at the end of the day, I just want to live a fulfilling life. I want to look back and know that I was able to help others, that I was able to lend a hand when somebody needed me, that I was able to encourage them to do better. So it's just thinking of leaving a better place. That's it. That's all that motivates me. Plus, I'm the mother of 3 sons. So that's another job in itself, right? Managing the household of 5 and having three boys. One is in university right now, and the other 2 are in middle and high school. But also, like you said, not just telling them that they should try to be good people, that they should try to be kind, that they should try to help others, but by showing them that, not only am I saying this, but I'm showing them how it could be done. I think it's extremely important.
I commend you, because I know it's what we mentioned with leadership. There's a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of work and a lot of passion, a lot of hours, a lot of sweat, blood, and tears. And do you feel like your kids look up to you? And when they do, how do you feel about that?
If I were to ask them, they will say like, oh, like, no, because they're teenagers, right? When I realize that they actually pay attention to what I do, especially with the oldest one, is when he now replicates a message in social media.
I love that.
Right? Or when he says, oh, kudos to my mother for doing this, or my mother also did this and that. So at one point
they're watching.
Right. Like one of them invited me to speak at their career fair at the school, so that I could share what I do. One of them raised his hand and decided to come with me to Princeton one time that I was invited to do a presentation, and he wanted to come because he wanted to see the university. So it's normal. I mean, they're young and they're boys and they're teenagers, but at the end of the day, again, no matter how much we talk about doing something, nothing is comparable to showing them. And for example, right now, they know that I'm here. They're waiting for me to go to their practice, and they respect, this type of spaces because they understand that there's a greater good too.
And how do you feel about that? How do you feel that they're watching and they're following your steps, even if it's a little step here and there, but they're doing that? They're replicating.
My mission in life is to make sure that they are good citizens, that they are trained to support their future significant others, that they're independent, that they follow their dreams, right? So everything that I preach to elevink and everything that I've done, because I also understand that life has many different paths, and that there is really no right or wrong way to get to where we want to get, and that every single person's mission in life is different. And just by having 3 children, I can tell you that 3 of them are extremely different from each other. And I have to support them and encourage them differently, depending on the situation and where they're at. So it makes me feel that I still have a lot of responsibility. My commitment with them is not done, because they'll always be, no matter how old they are, they'll always be my babies. But I want to make sure that like I am really supporting their inner desires, guiding them in the right direction, supporting them, but that at the end of the day, they decide to take a role where they will also play back and give back to the community. They're all very proud of being Hispanic, and the traditions, the food, the values, all of that. It's constantly lived in our household. So that's all I can guarantee that I can do. Whatever they decide to do as they become adults, it's a different story. But the influence that I'm trying to play on them is that of kindness, and determination to fulfill their own dreams.
I love that. I love that. And I'm sure that we can all learn from those two elements that you just mentioned, and by trying to emulate the work that you've done. So thank you, Claudia, for everything that you do, particularly with the elevink, but also paving the way, because showing the way, and that's part of being a leader, just showing the way, showing what's possible, and you do it by also growing and advancing. And I don't want to leave without you mentioning, how do people reach out to you? But also, how can people register and be part of the next cohort at elevink?
Yep. So you can always reach me at Claudia Vazquez in LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to outreach. The other one is you can follow me in Instagram, claudiavazquez.ceo. That's where all the news about elevink are placed. And right now, there's currently an open Eventbrite for the 6th cohort where people can register, or you can always outreach and I can send you the link directly. We also have a LinkedIn page called Elevink where all the post information and updates are being shared constantly.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Claudia, last pero no de último, ¿cuál es tu mensaje para la comunidad? What's your message for our community?
I would say let's go for it. Let's not wait for the perfect time. Let's not wait for everything to be perfectly laid out. Let's just continue to move forward in the pursuit of our dreams, and let's realize that we will be scared. But let's not allow fear to paralyze us and to have us second guess ourselves. We know internally where we want to go. And I think that the moment that we take that first step into that direction, everything starts to show up. People start to show up to help. You start to realize that there's a program that can help you get there. That there are resources available. So let's continue to live our lives the way that we intended it to be lived.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Claudia. I appreciate your time. Gracias por tu tiempo. And gracias a todos por conectar. Thank you for spending a few minutes of your day with us. And Claudia, keep doing the beautiful things that you're doing. You're truly elevating and creating inclusive spaces for all of us. So I appreciate you so much, the work that you do, and the whole program, all the cohort, all the people that you're surrounded by. So thank you, Claudia.
No, gracias a ti.
Igualmente. Cuídense mucho y nos vemos en un próximo episodio de Hablemos. Bye.
Adiós.